and welcome to the course of U.S. history. I am your host, Mr. Samuelson. Last time we were together, we looked at taxes and the resulting boycotts, particularly those following the French and Indian War and the reaction that they caused in the colonies. Today, we're looking at the colonies on the brink of war. That's right, we've got an American Revolution coming up. Let's see how we get there. It begins with the British reaction to that Boston Tea Party. They didn't too much like the colonists taking all their tea and dumping it in the harbor. If you don't know this about the British already, they tend to like tea, and wasting tea does not make the British happy. The British response to the Boston Tea Party was the intolerable acts. They're listed out here. They include the Boston Port Act, which we're about to get into, the Boston Government Act, where the legislature in Boston was suspended, the Administration of Justice Act, where they didn't trust people in Massachusetts to administer justice to British citizens any longer, the Quartering Act, where British soldiers could be housed in the homes of Americans living in Boston, and finally the Quebec Act, which had something to do with Quebec. Now, Boston Harbor in the Boston Port Act was the most significant of all of these. You see, Boston Harbor itself was closed until all the tea was paid for. And almost everybody living in Boston was economically connected to this port. Without the port functioning, they could not make a living. And if they couldn't make a living, we're talking about making money here, how are they going to pay for the tea? It's a bit of a problem that they had. Well, colonists everywhere, all the way down into Georgia, see this as an overreaction. They say, Britain, how could you possibly think that Boston could ever pay for this if you close down the harbor? That is overboard. It is an overreaction. So we have Sam Adams and his warning about the threat of British tyranny once again coming up and being accepted by the colonists as a whole. Sam Adams, more than just a beer. Now, the First Continental Congress. This is a meeting of 12 of the 13 colonies. Georgia didn't come. 12 of the 13 colonies to debate these British actions. They had to decide what it was they were going to do. Obviously, Britain had overreacted. The colonists had to respond. Well, they decided ultimately on three things that they would do at this First Continental Congress. First thing they were going to do is they were going to look at British trade. What should we do about it? We should stop trading with Britain. If they stop trade with Britain until the act is repealed, well, that's going to get British attention. Number two, Massachusetts has to be able to defend itself. If the British are doing this to Massachusetts, who knows what's going to come next? So the First Continental Congress says to those representatives from Massachusetts, go ahead, form yourself a militia. And they do that. And finally, they decide that they need to meet again in a short while to figure out how things are going, if things have gotten better, if they've gotten worse, how are they going to respond to that? So they plan their next meeting. Now, the Minutemen. The Minutemen are the militia that is formed in Massachusetts for the defense of the colony. And they wind up having a decent showing here. A lot of people sign up to be a part of the Minutemen. This is the influence of the Sons of Liberty being in Boston, Massachusetts, and a lot of patriotism in the area in the sense that Britain really was a threat. Now, when the British learn that the Minutemen are forming and that they've kind of gathered all of their weapons and ammo, not all of their weapons and ammo, but a lot of their weapons and ammo in a central location, Concord, Massachusetts, they send General Gage, this fella right here, to go and capture those weapons and that ammo. Now, Paul Revere, this handsome-looking devil right there, is going to become famous, not just as a member of the Sons of Liberty, although he was a leading member of the Sons of Liberty, but for this midnight ride where he runs off through the night warning, the British are coming, the British are coming. Here's a fun side note. Lisa Simpson knows about this. Paul Revere is actually captured by the British, and he won't be the one that gets to Concord on time to warn them. It will be William Dawes. But William Dawes isn't a leader within the Sons of Liberty, so nobody cares about him. Paul Revere, he's the guy. Now, Lexington and Concord. We're going to have some battles here, not just a massacre like they had at the Boston Massacre, but some actual battles. The first one is going to be at Lexington. Lexington, General Gage shows up. He's got 700 soldiers with him, so a decent number of troops. And they're marching to Concord, but on the road to Concord is this little village of Lexington. And in Lexington, these 70 Minutemen have gotten together. And they stand right across the road and do not let the British forces pass. And they spend a good number of hours there. See, the British are hesitant to actually open fire on the colonists. This is not a war yet. There have been no battles. But they have a mission. They are going to get those weapons. They warn these Minutemen at Lexington, move or we will fire. And those Minutemen at Lexington do not move, and eventually the British fire. Now, it is 700 trained British regular soldiers versus 70 militiamen. So this is not much of a battle so much as it is just the British fire their first round of shots, and any Minutemen still standing take off. The British defeat these colonists. But they had been stalled at Lexington for the better part of a day. This has given an opportunity for the Minutemen to really gather at Concord. Word has spread. Minutemen are gathering. And when Gage shows up in Concord, he's outnumbered. There are more Minutemen there than he has troops. The colonists attack. Gage simply doesn't have anything else to do. He hops on his horse, and he and as many of his men as he can get out of there. They get out of there. Because if they stayed, they were going to be absolutely massacred. So, back in Philadelphia, the Second Continental Congress is meeting while this is going on. And the movement for independence is growing. Sam Adams has been spreading his word further and further through a group called the Committees of Correspondence, and getting more and more people on the side of independence. Know who Sam Adams is. He is not just an adult beverage found at your local convenience store. The British, their attack and loss of the Battle of Concord serves to convince people not only of the tyranny of Great Britain, they attack the colonists, but that they are weak and vulnerable and could be beaten. So now that the colonists have actually defeated the British, well, maybe we could win a war. Now, not everybody is ready to jump right into this full-on warfare. They're not ready to fully commit to an independent nation, but they're going to prepare for it. And Congress, the Second Continental Congress, is going to do two things here. They're going to resolve to, one, send an olive branch petition, one last attempt to have peace with Britain. They're going to send this over to the king. And in the meantime, while they wait for a reply, they're going to do everything they can to prepare for a full-out war with England. That war is coming. It's coming next time. Next time we are going to be looking at the Declaration of Independence and the start of the American Revolution. I'm looking forward to that. I hope you are too. Thank you for joining me today for the course of U.S. history, and farewell.